Johnson Mendez was only 16 when the prison doors closed behind him for the last time. A boy with a future, straight A's, dreams of becoming a software engineer, a quiet love for music, was led to the gallows under the weight of a crime he didn't commit. The case had stunned the country. The brutal stabbing of a wealthy businessman, Thomas Mendez, Johnson's father. The boy had been found holding the bloody knife in the hallway, his clothes soaked in crimson, frozen in shock. The prosecution painted him as a disturbed teenager who snapped. The jury took less than 2 hours to reach a verdict. No one fought for him, not even his mother. The courtroom was a maelstrom of accusations and condemnations, a theater of public outrage where Johnson was cast as the villain before the curtain even rose. His court-appointed lawyer, overwhelmed and under-resourced, offered a weak defense, a series of hesitant arguments drowned out by the prosecution's roaring narrative of a spoiled, resentful son. The lawyer spoke of Johnson's gentle nature, his academic achievements, his lack of any prior violent tendencies. But these were whispers against a hurricane. The media, a ravenous beast, had already convicted Johnson in the court of public opinion, feeding on the sensationalism of a wealthy family torn apart by patricide. The trial was a spectacle. Television cameras lined the courthouse steps, their lenses like hungry eyes, capturing every distraught expression of Sarah Mendez, the grieving widow, and the stoic, almost ethereal presence of young Ellie, her face pale and etched with a grief too profound for her 10 years. Sarah, veiled in black, played her role with chilling perfection, the picture of a devastated mother grappling with unimaginable loss and betrayal. Her carefully modulated sorrow, her hushed pronouncements of disbelief and pain, resonated with the jury, painting Johnson as a monstrous aberration within their seemingly perfect family. Ellie, small and lost in the adult chaos, was a ghostly presence in the courtroom, her silent pleas for her brother's innocence lost in the cacophony. She tried to speak, her small hand raised tentatively during a recess, wanting to tell the judge, the jury, anyone who would listen, about the real Johnson. She wanted to describe his patience when teaching her to ride her bike, his gentle strumming on his guitar as he sang her lullabies, his unwavering kindness to stray animals, his quiet empathy that made him the confidant of all her childhood fears and dreams. But she was ushered away, told to be quiet, that the adults were handling things. Her childish innocence was no match for the manufactured narrative of guilt. The evidence, circumstantial yet visually damning, was presented with theatrical precision. The bloody knife, brandished before the jury like a trophy of guilt. The crime scene photos, graphic and gruesome, projected onto a large screen, searing themselves into the collective consciousness. Johnson's clothes, saturated in his father's blood, displayed as irrefutable proof of his culpability. The prosecution argued motive, teenage rebellion, resentment over parental control, the inherent instability of adolescence. They hinted at a dark undercurrent in Johnson's quiet demeanor, suggesting a simmering rage masked by a veneer of academic achievement. The jury, swayed by the emotional weight of the case and the lack of any compelling alternative explanation, deliberated for a mere hour and 47 minutes. Guilty. The word reverberated through the courtroom, a death knell for Johnson's future, a crushing blow to Ellie's fragile hope. Johnson stood ashen-faced, his youthful features suddenly aged, his eyes wide with disbelief and a dawning horror. He was led away in handcuffs, the weight of the verdict, the weight of a crime he didn't commit, pressing down on his young shoulders. The execution was swift, efficient, and brutally final. The state machinery of justice, once set in motion, was relentless, unforgiving. Appeals were filed, pro bono lawyers briefly rallied, but the momentum of public opinion and the perceived strength of the prosecution's case were insurmountable. Johnson's final days were spent in a sterile cell, his dreams of software engineering and music dissolving into the cold reality of his impending death. He wrote letters to Ellie, filled with love and reassurance, urging her to remember him not as a killer, but as her brother, her protector, her friend. He clung to the hope that someday the truth would emerge, that his innocence would be vindicated, even if it was too late for him. Years passed, each one a slow, agonizing march of time for Ellie. The Mendez estate, a symbol of their shattered family, was carved up, the pieces scattered like debris after a storm. The company, Thomas's legacy, was sold to the highest bidders, its identity fragmented, its soul lost. Sarah retreated into a carefully constructed isolation, a self-imposed exile in a secluded villa, her public appearances rare, her pronouncements carefully curated. The mansion on Fernhill Drive, once vibrant with life and laughter, became a silent, darkened tomb, its windows like vacant eyes staring out at a world that had moved on, leaving it behind in a shroud of grief and unanswered questions. Until that summer afternoon, 7 years later, Ellie, 17 now, on the cusp of adulthood, returned to the mansion with her Aunt Clara. Clara, Thomas's sister, had become Ellie's guardian, her rock in the storm-tossed sea of grief. Clara, with her quiet strength and unwavering love, had provided Ellie with a semblance of normalcy, a refuge from the lingering shadows of the past. Cleaning out the attic was Clara's idea, a practical task with a deeper purpose, to confront the ghosts of the past, to sift through the remnants of their former lives, to perhaps find a way to move forward. The attic was a suffocating time capsule, thick with the scent of dust, decay, and forgotten memories. Sunlight filtered weakly through cracks in the boarded-up windows, illuminating swirling motes of dust that danced in the stagnant air. It was a chaotic repository of Ellie's childhood, a jumbled collection of toys, books, clothes, and forgotten treasures. As she sifted through boxes, a wave of nostalgia washed over her, bittersweet memories of happier times mingling with the ever-present ache of loss. Her hand brushed against something small and smooth, hidden beneath a pile of old scarves and moth-eaten blankets. A worn, velvet-covered jewelry box, its color faded and muted by time and dust. She didn't recognize it. It wasn't hers, nor did she remember ever seeing it in her mother's possession. Curiosity, a flicker of unexpected intrigue, stirred within her. She lifted the box, its velvet surprisingly soft beneath her fingertips despite its age. The clasp, tarnished with age, clicked open with a gentle, almost whispered snap, releasing the musty scent of aged velvet and forgotten secrets. Inside, nestled amongst yellowed cotton batting, beneath a pair of cheap, fake pearl earrings that looked pathetically out of place, lay a micro-SD memory card. Small, unassuming, yet radiating an aura of significance that sent a shiver down Ellie's spine. It felt strangely out of place, a piece of modern technology amidst the relics of a bygone era. A strange chill trickled down her spine, an instinct, a premonition, whispering that this tiny piece of plastic held a key, a secret, something important. She took it home, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. In the quiet sanctuary of her bedroom, away from the dusty silence of the attic and the watchful eyes of her aunt, she carefully inserted the micro-SD card into her phone. The screen flickered to life, displaying a single file. Backdoor_archive_07_18. The date of the murder. The words seemed to pulse on the screen, radiating an ominous energy. Her breath hitched in her throat, her fingers trembling as she tapped the play button. The video quality was grainy, the angle awkward, the lighting dim. It was clearly shot from a hidden security camera, positioned on the back porch, pointed towards the kitchen door. The timestamp in the corner of the screen confirmed her worst fears. July 18th, the night her father died. The night Johnson's life was irrevocably shattered. The kitchen door creaked open on the recording, the sound amplified in the low-resolution video, sending a shiver of dread through Ellie. Her mother, Sarah, stepped into the frame. Even in the grainy footage, her face was a mask of barely suppressed rage, her movements tense and agitated. She looked disheveled, her carefully constructed composure unraveling, revealing a raw, unsettling fury that Ellie had never witnessed before. Moments later, Johnson followed, his shoulders slumped, his head bowed, his youthful frame radiating vulnerability and distress. He looked like a lamb being led to slaughter. "You don't have to do this." His voice, younger, softer, more pleading than Ellie remembered, trembled through the phone speaker. "Dad changed the will." "Yes, but you said you'd be okay with it." His words were filled with a desperate hope, a naive belief in his mother's rationality, a heartbreaking misunderstanding of the darkness that resided within her. Sarah's reply was chillingly calm, devoid of any trace of maternal warmth or affection. "I lied." The words hung in the air, heavy with malice, a cold, calculated betrayal that resonated with a horrifying finality. The simplicity of the statement, its utter lack of remorse, was more terrifying than any screamed accusation. Then came the glint of metal, a sharp, sudden flash under the harsh, fluorescent kitchen light. A knife. Sarah held it in her hand, the blade reflecting the light like a malevolent eye. Her grip tight, her stance predatory. Ellie's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a scream. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror and disbelief. The video descended into a blur of motion, a chaotic dance of violence and desperation. Johnson backing away, his eyes wide with terror, his hands raised in a futile gesture of defense. Sarah lunging forward, her movements swift, brutal, fueled by a rage that seemed to consume her entirely. Then a scream, high-pitched, agonizing, tearing through the grainy audio, a sound that ripped through Ellie's soul. Johnson's scream. The recording cut to static, the screen flickering and dissolving into a gray void, leaving Ellie in a stunned silence, the kitchen air suddenly thick and suffocating, the weight of the truth crushing her. Ellie sat motionless for what felt like hours, the phone clutched in her trembling hand, the grainy images replaying in her mind on an endless loop. Her brother hadn't killed their father. Sarah had. Her mother, the woman who had raised her, the woman she had trusted, had committed this unspeakable act, had framed Johnson, had condemned him to death for a crime he didn't commit. Sarah had killed both of them, her husband and her son, one with a knife, the other with a lie. The realization was a physical blow, knocking the wind out of her lungs, leaving her gasping for breath, her world tilting on its axis. The news broke like an avalanche, a tidal wave of shock and outrage that swept across the nation. New evidence suggests teen executed for a crime he didn't commit. The headline screamed, plastered across every news website, every newspaper front page. The video went viral in less than 24 hours, shared and reshared millions of times, a digital wildfire igniting public fury and demanding justice for Johnson, demanding accountability for the egregious miscarriage of justice. Protesters flooded the steps of the Department of Justice, their chants echoing against the marble facade, their signs emblazoned with Johnson's face, their voices demanding answers, demanding action. Talk shows dissected every frame of the grainy footage, analyzing Sarah's cold demeanor, Johnson's desperate pleas, the undeniable evidence of his innocence. The story was on every major news outlet, dominating the news cycle, pushing aside all other stories, captivating the nation's attention with its tragic tale of betrayal and injustice. Sarah Mendez was arrested in her secluded country villa, the tranquility of her carefully constructed retreat shattered by the flashing lights of police cars and the relentless glare of the media. The arrest was televised live, a public spectacle of justice, finally catching up with a woman who had believed herself to be untouchable. In the footage shown during her arraignment and subsequent trial, Sarah's coldness was undeniable, her demeanor chillingly detached, her expressions devoid of remorse. What followed was even more shocking, a cascade of revelations that further darkened the already grim narrative. DNA tests, ordered amidst the renewed investigation, confirmed what no one had dared to question before. Sarah was not Johnson's biological mother. The revelation sent shockwaves through the media and the public, adding another layer of complexity and intrigue to the already sensational case. Documents emerged from dusty archives and forgotten files, unearthed by tenacious journalists and investigators. Adoption forms forged with meticulous precision, birth records altered, names erased and rewritten, a paper trail of deceit and manipulation stretching back decades. Johnson had been born from Thomas Mendez's secret affair, a hidden child brought into the family fold under the pretense of being an orphan cousin when the affair ended. Sarah, childless and resentful, unwilling to raise another woman's child, had agreed to the charade, raising Johnson with a polite, brittle veneer, a performance of maternal affection that masked a deep-seated resentment and a simmering hatred. Ellie, born years later through IVF, was her true daughter, her chosen child, the sole recipient of whatever genuine maternal affection Sarah was capable of. According to court psychologists, Sarah's resentment towards Johnson had festered for years, a slow-burning poison corroding her soul. When Thomas announced his revised will, transferring 80% of his assets to Johnson, the carefully constructed facade of control shattered. The will was the catalyst, the spark that ignited her long-simmering rage, transforming her resentment into a cold, calculated plan of murder and deceit. Her hatred morphed into quiet calculation, a meticulous scheme to eliminate both her husband and the unwanted son who threatened her carefully constructed world. When she murdered Thomas, she made sure Johnson was the one holding the knife when the neighbors arrived, drawn by the triggered alarm, meticulously staging the scene to ensure his conviction. Everything had gone according to plan, perfectly, ruthlessly, flawlessly executed, until Ellie found the memory card, a tiny piece of plastic containing the damning truth, a digital ghost from the past rising to haunt the present and shatter Sarah's carefully constructed lies. But Ellie didn't stop there. Fueled by grief, anger, and an unwavering determination to clear her brother's name and expose the full extent of Sarah's depravity, she began looking through her father's encrypted files. Thomas Mendez had been an organized man, almost obsessively so, meticulously documenting every aspect of his life and business dealings. With the help of Maya Sharma, the tech journalist who had become Ellie's ally and confidant, she delved into the labyrinthine world of her father's digital life, navigating layers of encryption and security protocols. Together, they unearthed a treasure trove of information, audio memos, legal files, internal company communications, buried deep within the encrypted archives. The documents revealed a shocking pattern of financial irregularities, a trail of money leading to offshore accounts, shell corporations, and shadowy financial entities. Sarah had been systematically attempting to siphon company funds, embezzling vast sums of money through a complex web of illegal transactions. Thomas had discovered her deception, the evidence irrefutable, the betrayal devastating. The will wasn't the only reason Sarah had killed him. It was likely the final straw, the culmination of her greed and her fear of exposure. She hadn't just killed him over the will. She had done it to silence him, to protect her criminal enterprise, to maintain her illusion of wealth and respectability. Sarah's trial was the media event of the decade, eclipsing even the initial frenzy surrounding Johnson's wrongful conviction. The courtroom was packed every day, the air thick with anticipation and morbid curiosity. Calm and composed on the stand, Sarah displayed no remorse, no hint of regret, her demeanor icily detached, her eyes cold and unwavering. When asked directly by the prosecutor if she regretted what she had done, if she felt any remorse for taking a life and destroying 2 others, she delivered a statement that chilled the courtroom to its core. "No," she stated, her voice clear and steady, echoing in the hushed silence. "I cleaned up a mess my husband made. Johnson was a threat to my future. I neutralized it." The silence that followed her statement was profound, absolute, a chilling testament to her utter lack of humanity, her complete absence of conscience. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole, a sentence that finally brought a measure of legal justice for Johnson and Thomas. But for Ellie, legal justice wasn't enough. It didn't bring her brother back. It didn't erase the years of grief and injustice. It didn't heal the gaping wound in her heart. But it did ignite a fire within her, a fierce determination to ensure that no other child suffered the same fate as Johnson. She launched the Johnson Innocence Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to fighting for wrongfully convicted juveniles, becoming a tireless advocate for justice reform. The first case her foundation took on was that of a 14-year-old boy wrongly accused of shooting a police officer during a traffic stop, a case riddled with inconsistencies and a complete lack of physical evidence, no weapon ever found. The accusation based solely on unreliable eyewitness testimony. Within months, through Ellie's relentless advocacy and the Foundation's dedicated legal team, the case was overturned, the boy exonerated, his freedom restored. Ellie became the youngest recipient of a National Justice Award, her acceptance speech a powerful and moving tribute to Johnson's memory and a passionate call for a more just and equitable juvenile justice system. On what would have been Johnson's 24th birthday, Ellie stood at his gravesite in the quiet solitude of the cemetery. The old headstone, a stark reminder of the initial injustice, had been replaced. The new inscription, etched in bold letters, proclaimed his truth to the world. Johnson Mendez, the innocent, the unheard, the unforgotten. It was a promise, a testament to his enduring legacy, a symbol of Ellie's unwavering commitment to justice in his name. But there was one final twist to the story, a final layer of darkness to be uncovered. 6 months after Sarah's conviction, Ellie received an anonymous letter, hand-delivered, slipped into her mailbox, without a return address. Inside, nestled between folded sheets of plain white paper, was another memory card. This time, the footage was not from their home, but from a hidden camera, discreetly placed in a plush corporate office, the setting unmistakably high-end. She inserted the card into her laptop, her heart pounding with a mixture of dread and a chilling sense of inevitability. The video began to play, grainy but clear enough to discern the figures in the frame. Sarah was there, her face contorted in anger, her voice sharp and accusatory, locked in a heated argument with someone else, a man in a dark, impeccably tailored suit, his face partially obscured by shadows, his posture radiating power and a cold, calculating menace. "You said I just had to take care of Thomas and the boy." Sarah snapped, her voice laced with fear and resentment. The man growled, his voice low and threatening, a voice that exuded authority and ruthlessness. "You made it messy, Sarah. Unnecessarily messy. And now the whole plan is unraveling. Do you realize how much that company was worth? We were supposed to bleed it dry, piece by piece, not blow it all up with your melodrama. Your little drama attracted far too much attention." Ellie froze, her breath catching in her throat. It wasn't just greed. It wasn't just about the will or the embezzlement. It was a conspiracy, a meticulously orchestrated plan that ran far deeper, reaching into the shadowy corners of corporate power and ruthless ambition. Sarah wasn't the mastermind. She was a pawn, a tool, manipulated by someone else, someone far more powerful, someone who stood to gain immeasurably from Thomas's death and the systematic dismantling of his empire. The video ended abruptly, the man's voice delivering a final, chilling command, his words laced with cold finality. "Burn everything that connects us, Sarah. Every document, every communication. And don't ever contact me again. Consider this our final transaction." Ellie stared at the screen, the final words echoing in her mind, the implications of the video sinking in, chilling her to the bone. Her hands trembled not with fear, but with a renewed sense of purpose, a burning determination to uncover the full truth, to expose the puppet master behind Sarah's crimes, to bring justice not just for Johnson, but for her father as well. The fight for justice was far from over. It had just entered a new, even more dangerous phase. There was more to uncover, and she wouldn't stop until every last thread of the truth was pulled into the light, no matter how dark or dangerous the path ahead.